life is busy, time is short, but universe has room for passion. Universe definitely has room for innovation. And I've always felt that 70% of the human body is water, 70% of the earth is water. There is a definite cosmic alignment between the two situations. And my feeling has been that there is a larger force that determines us, that runs us, and we cannot ever own our own doings beyond a point because I think we are run by a superpower. And I think connecting into that and submitting into that and being having gratitude towards that superpower does allow to get for us great downloads. And in those downloads, not only does our neocortex, as the information gets better hierarchized, it opens up room to get more and connect more. And I think innovation is, to a great extent, the connection of a lot of information touch points and building the superstructures in your head around information touch points.
Hey, I'm Bryan Wish, and welcome back to the One Away Show. Today's guest is Anuj Gupta, an entrepreneur, systems thinker, and founder of GreenVan, a company that's redefining how services are booked and delivered through AI and conversational commerce. Anuj shares how growing up in India sparked a lifelong sensitivity to what he calls the infrastructure of imperfection, how brilliant minds were often held back by broken systems. That awareness, along with deep spiritual grounding from his grandmother, set him on a path of relentless curiosity, global thinking, and innovation with purpose. In this episode, we explore the philosophy behind GreenVan, why the next trillion-dollar businesses will emerge through better experiences, not just better tech, and how Anuj sees chat-based AI as the future of accessing real-world services. From system redesign to spiritual insight, this one is as expansive as it is energizing. Let's dive in. Anuj, welcome to the One Away Show.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm really glad to have you here. Uh, Anuj, I've really enjoyed our conversations and you telling me about your journey as an entrepreneur and what you're building. And but I'm just curious, the purpose of the show is to share trajectory changing moments and through that, what we call one away moments. And so how would you how would you define a one-away moment for yourself that was very trajectory changing?
I mean, being born in India, first of all, I felt I won the lottery of unconditional blessings from my grandmother, who was meditating on the mountain as a saint for the last couple of decades. But I think, the challenges of India, I felt that I wanted to turn the situation from tragic to magic, from being extinguished to distinguished. And there was this fire to kind of get out of there. But I always knew that there exists a catalyst beyond the current circumstance, beyond the current environment for me to have a better outcome. And for me, it was the realization that creating that moment, and I believe that creating inflection points is the job of a progressive person. And I felt that creating more inflection points for myself would be something important. So for me, it was not the one specific aha moment, but a collection of thoughts that got me to a concluded position that my duty would be to create an inflection point for myself to propel to the next level.
Interesting. Yeah, it's I mean, you're right. It's what enables us to progress in life is often a lot of thoughts, decisions, teachers that allow us to propel and progress. One of the things that I want to dive into, if you're okay with it, is you said growing up in India it was a blessing, but you said from tragic to magic. What was I would love for you to unpack that. What was define tragic, make that tangible for us, and then would love to understand what you mean by magic and the other side of that.
So, India is very uniquely positioned where human intelligence is greater than human infrastructure. And people have the ability to do a lot of things, but they're touched by the capability of the environment.
Mm,
So it's like you are in a Ferrari on a street that doesn't move. And the Ferrari is your intelligence. And that's what typically you see around in India. People are really bright. And, today that is, there's you can see that through the fact that the CEOs of most important companies in the world, whether it's Google or it's Microsoft or is this or is that, they're coming out of India. And the point I'm trying to make is that when I was born here and raised here, I felt that the infrastructure around me was slow, was difficult, and wasn't free. I mean, wasn't letting us walk the open road. And it was very clutching. But but the fact that we knew that there is something to be done out there was the fact that there was a feeling to create some magic. And we knew that being mathematically driven, being driven through physics and logic, there was this opportunity of creating more things in an environment that just worked better and more things could get done in an hour. To me, the metric of success of an economy or a country or a city is when number of things that can get done in an hour. And I saw some of our friends and some of our greater families sitting in the US and, would just talk about more things in an hour. I'm like, what's going on there? So by tragic, I meant that things were just slow, but people were really fast and sharp. And I could see myself applying some of my thought process to a better environment and producing a better outcome.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a pretty sharp and distinct perspective, and I think like very beautifully stated. And talking about, uh, you said it's like people were Ferraris with their brains and the kind of how they thought, but they were kind of slowed down by the outer infrastructure. Yet when you see that, it's I want to do something about that. I mean, so if you don't mind, I'd love to take this even deeper. Like growing up, I mean, what was it like growing up with your family? I mean, what was it? Were they pointing out? Were they kind of showing you this as well, or did you kind of formulate your thoughts on your own? Was it a mix of the two? I'm just curious, kind of, you've created a better life for yourself, and you're working on infrastructure. You're doing a lot of big thoughts and ideas to really change things for the better. But like, where did that start? Was that kinda at the family, kitchen table where your parents were like, "There's a better life," or were you kind of off wandering as a child? How could things be better on your own?
As I said in the earlier part, that I felt that I was born with, and I won the lottery of getting unconditional blessings from my grandmother, who was a saint on a mountain. She was really a saint. I mean, sitting on a mountain for 20 years. And she had a very illustrious life. And, in her time when she was not praying, she was traveling the world and they had a very um, happy and, sufficient life. But what that somehow, I always have felt that when people are more internally connected, there comes this fire in people to produce ideas. And it's just a bizarre thing that the connection with the universe, connection with the grand design power just becomes better. And in my family, which is a family of lawyers, there was a lot of conversation around different experiences, and that opened up conversations in my head. And I would not say that I was given a direct feed, but I was talked around the point onto some really intelligent conversations, which started to make me feel and analyze some gaps and think about gaps. And I always felt that, oh my God. And I've always, Brian, applied what I call the lens of imperfection. And what I mean to say is I look at everything and I'm like, oh my God, this is so imperfect. This could be so much better. And when I look at doors and I look at windows and I look at anything in the world, I start to think that things are not perfect at all. There's so much room for improvement. Forget perfection. Not, we are, if not centuries, at least decades away from perfection on anything. So I always looked at things and I'm like, oh my God, there's a gap. This could be so much better. And I had this specific thing in my head that can I think about 10 things that could make this door better? There's 10 things that could make this window better, 10 things that could make this table better, or my environment better, and always felt there was a gap. So what I mean to say is that it wasn't a direct feed, but just the fact that look at things around me, like look, things can get better. So it was that hope and belief that things can be better, which was fed into some passive conversations in the family. And then, one thing led to another. And
Yeah.
the infrastructure of thought just kept developing from there.
Interesting. The infrastructure thought developed as you notice gaps in infrastructure to make things better in the world. I want to come back to that. One of the things that I love that you were talking about was um, your grandmother, and it sounds like she was a great example for you. But then you also said something to the extent in relation is when you're kind of connected to yourself and kind of spiritually inside, like ideas take root a little bit more. Um, how have you become, more, let's just say, spiritually connected, and how has that unlocked your ability to see things more clearly?
I think universe has room for passion. Life is busy, time is short, but universe has room for passion. Universe definitely has room for innovation. And I've always felt that, we are 70% of the human body is water, 70% of the earth is water. There is a definite cosmic alignment between the two situations. And my feeling has been that there is a larger force that determines us, that runs us, and we cannot ever own our own doings beyond a point, because I think we are run by a superpower. And I think connecting into that and submitting into that and being having gratitude towards that superpower does allow to get for us great downloads. And in those downloads, not only does our neocortex, as the information gets better hierarchized, it opens up room to get more and connect more. And I think innovation is, to a great extent, the connection of a lot of information touch points and building the superstructures in your head around the information touch points.
Mm.
And so I feel opening up our aura, connecting to the divine, letting things become more relaxed and open allows us to witness downloads, and then it allows us better bridging, better superstructure creation, and I think we start moving from what I call adjacent possible to the mainstream of innovation.
What I really align with and think is when you're able to do that, and tell me if I'm wrong, you're innovating from a place of, the inside out. Like you're innovating from a place that's aligned and congruent to who you are versus, hey, that's an opportunity where a ton of money is. Let's just go do that. Versus, hey, like this is speaking, and that's what I'm hearing you say. It's you've had the opportunity to really process your surroundings and form structures that have enabled thought so that you can innovate on the things that speak to you. Is that fair?
That's very fair, because I think being data driven is limiting in its potential. And I think, as I say, our expectation of our future is linear, but our potential is exponential. And I think when you're driven by your feelings and your gap that you feel that you can see, and then you can, verify that through various other ways. But I think that produces truly a dynamic change and a paradigm shift. If you think about the App Store, okay, the App Store that was brought about by, Steve Jobs got the App Store. It wasn't anything to do with outside. It was purely his insight that brought it out. There was nothing telling you, there was nothing in the adjacent possible there that the App Store could be created. He got something brand new to the world. And a lot of things are just the next logical conclusion of a lot of things, but this was a brand new planet of existence and a basket of admirables that was brought into the world by Jobs. So if you think about it, he totally came, and he's somebody who's been spiritual, who's been, meditating in the autobiography of Yogi and so on and so forth. And, so I'm just saying that that is a reflection of the vastness that somebody like him could do, and, something like that normal person can imagine.
Yeah, totally. He was definitely very spiritually alive, and probably listened to that inner voice a lot to drive his um, innovation and hard push for a better, which I'm hearing you say is, you know, something that's important to you. Anuj, you're very globalized, and you're doing things in the world that are shaping infrastructure. Um, but right now, like at large, right? Before we speak more about Green Van and what you're doing, where in the world do you see the most technological disruption ahead? And what do you see needing to change the most?
That's a good question. I think the technological disruption, I think by far, is going to come the most from the United States. I Because disruption is an accretive next step to what already exists. For somebody to make 10 jumps to get across the line, or somebody to make one jump across the line, is a whole different magnitude of expectation. I think adoption is going to come from developing markets like Asia and so on and so forth. But disruption is going to really come from countries that have capital, that have risk appetite, that have clusters of human intelligence, consumer underwriting, um, you know, principal risk participation capability, um, a partnership with entrepreneurship. And I think all those kind of good things that exist in an economy. And I think the US is leading it by far. And I mean, so the underwriting that the ecosystem of the US gives to an idea or to an entrepreneur, I think is by far greater and by orders of magnitude compared to most other countries that I can imagine today. I think there is a significant difference of light years between the US potential and I think a lot of the other places. I mean, I would say ideas and innovation can happen in many places, but the monetization and disruption conclusion is going to really happen in the US.
Why is that the case? Why can't it happen more in Canada or Europe or India or London? What is it about the US that makes ideas faster to be commercialized?
It's very straightforward. And Brian, you know this more than me, but I think access to capital, stigma around failure, and, you know, having the ability to um, have the confidence that if you fail, you can still get the job. If it didn't work out, having the capability of getting a job again is not impossible. And you can still go meet people in society, um, you know, is the reason why the US is able to make it when everybody else kind of struggles because you have an idea on toilet paper in the US, you get 20, 30 grand. Somebody says, oh, go check it out. I mean, you have to be post product market fit, post revenue. As you start to go from the US to UK, US idea on toilet paper. UK, you have to be post product market fit. India, you have to be post revenue. And I'm guessing in Africa, it's post profit. You get the same amount of money. So the relationship between risk and capital significantly shifts as you move geographies, and that completely changes the perspective of the entrepreneur, the ability to leave and to cross. They cannot leave the shore to cross the ocean because they're so scared of leaving the shore because if they it could be doomsday. Versus the US is like an idea and it just didn't work out. Okay, fine. That doesn't happen. And that's why leading and bleeding edge have a beautiful relationship in the US.
It's funny. I was at a startup event last night, and I met two entrepreneurs from London, and I met some other people from London here, and both of them, echoed very similar thoughts. It's much harder to get early stage capital in London, just because of the mentality of how things are. Whereas here, I remember that the woman said to me last night, she's like, "Yeah, there was an investor," and he's like, "Yeah, let me know when you're raising." And she's like, "I haven't even gotten to revenue yet," and it was like kind of this. She was blown away, right? And so, to your point, the relationship between risk and innovation and, yeah, I totally understand. So,
Exactly. So I think that is a significant point in the results, the way results have been in the world. I mean, a major percentage of the world unicorns and innovation really comes out of a certain part of the world, and that's the US. And why? We know this. So it's not an unknown. It's not something that's sitting in the zone of luck, but it's sitting in the zone of, the reality of the circumstances.
from what you just said, you see technological innovation happening primarily in the US because of the appetite for risk. Now, let's take that a layer deeper. What do you maybe see needing to change the most from a technological perspective to make things in the world a lot better? Because when we started the call, you said you walk into rooms and you look at desks and door frames and curtains and you're like, hey, this how could this be better? And we have years to go. But from a global perspective, what do you see needing to change the most?
From a technology point of view, there's one answer. From a geopolitical point of view, there's another answer. From the world peace point of view, there's another answer. But I think if you look at the red thread, I think technology and systems need to come together to create a better underwriting for human existence. Um, just because there is a privileged environment in one part of the world, it should not mean that that should take advantage of something else in another part of the world. I feel a more level playing field, where somebody is benefiting because of certain things, they could benefit somebody else because of the fact that they've witnessed the growth. So, what I feel needs to change is the metrics of success that are currently accepted as the final metrics of success have to be brought to the other parts of the world saying, I mean, you can imagine somebody with IQ level 90 is compensated very differently in, let's say, the US versus India. They're exactly the same people with exactly the same skill, but they have a very different take home in terms of, you know, emotional return or commercial return. So I feel one thing that we have to be all responsible for in the next decade is that we try to create what I call a pari passu environment, an environment of more equality in terms of capability getting rewarded in similar ways than having a huge differential there. So, because then people can work hard equally and get rewarded kind of similarly, versus one person in one part of the world has got 120 IQ, working 11 hours a day, being paid 25% of somebody working 4 hours a day and the like 80 IQ. That is not a great situation. So, of course, countries have their own interests to protect. But if you ask me as a free market entrepreneur, that would be something that I would feel very fair and square. And I think the world needs to head to that environment because it should be a privilege of the human beings versus geographies.
So it sounds like what you're saying as well is creating more equality of opportunities for people kind of working hard at different things across the world. And how do you enable that through technology?
Yeah, and I mean today so much is happening. I mean, we've seen tremendous amount of bridging of the gap between what was there 20 years ago to now. Everybody has the cloud, everybody has the browser, everybody has access to compute. People, there's so much democratization that's happened and access to great technology infrastructure for people to build amazing stuff. So we've seen great stuff come out of simple countries. So it is telling me the world is already heading to an environment where the factors of production are completely changing from land, labor, capital, enterprise to just enterprise. And everything else is there's no land that's needed anymore. There's no labor that's needed anymore. There's hardly any capital. And I have a computer and I can write a great software and write a beautiful new chat GPT and become a founder of chat GPT or perplexity or whatever these businesses that are getting built out from people in their bedrooms. So I think the definition of factors of production is changing. And I think that's allowing more and more creativity and innovation to happen. And all thanks to great access to democratized infrastructure.
I appreciate your perspective. I think you're approaching it from you, you have a good way that it sounds like to perceive things like around you and kind of make sense of it all, right? And connect that globally and then kind of down to the problems within kind of where you are, which leads me to my next question. What you're building with Green Van, I think is super interesting. Would you mind sharing with us what Green Van does, kind of how and where the idea came from?
So, very simplistically put, Brian, Greenvan allows customers to book tradespeople from WhatsApp. If you wanted a plumber, an electrician, a locksmith, a chef, a waste removal job, you can book that service from your WhatsApp. Forget everything else at a great price with great service promise, and the person is going to come on a day and a time that you want. Okay, with free changes and cancellations to the booking. That's all the Greenland does. Everything else that I'm going to speak about it after that does not matter with the consumer. But for the sake of this interview and telling you that why this has happened now and why this not could happen earlier and why it's such a cool idea and why it's such a grand idea and why it's the next big thing, I will go into that for the next 2 minutes. Okay. And this is going to be a more data driven answer. I mean, it's a large opportunity. It's a couple of $1 trillion market opportunity. It's massive in terms of the margins it can create, the velocity that can create, and the convenience to the consumer, less friction to the consumer, more underwriting to the tradesman, doubling the income of the tradesman, doubling the family time of the tradesman, creating thousands of jobs in the economies where we're going to operate. So think about it like this: we're digitizing the middleman. There was a middleman that sat between the consumer and the tradesman who was going to do the job. He was on the phone and he was limited in his capability and his execution. But that function of the middleman is now replaceable with technology, and technology, primarily conversational AI, generative AI, the work that used to do with agentic AI. So a lot of the work of the middleman is now replaceable. And that middleman was a huge cost in that industry. Imagine when 20 years ago, travel was replaced from travel being booked on the phone to travel booked online. Then taxi was being booked on the phone and taxi got replaced online by Uber. In the services space, we are replacing that booking on the phone to booking on the chat because AI, conversational AI, generative AI allows us to digitize the consultative closure over a chat conversation versus making a phone call, which completely slows this industry down. So it's a big shift. And the time has come now to reorganize this $2 trillion trades industry and making it super amazing. So simplifying for the consumer and amplifying for the stakeholder is something that sits at the forefront of our thought.
Wow, fascinating. And so what you know to share, it's more or less a marketplace on WhatsApp.
Sorry to interrupt you there. A marketplace is typically a place where a customer comes and is bridged into a tradesperson. We are an executing company. The customer does not know who's going to come and do the job. Green Van books the job,
I see.
understands the scope of work, gives the price, makes the booking, takes the payment, and books Mr. X tradesman who's going to come to your home and do the job. You have no idea who that person is going to be until the person, okay?
Got there.
That is because we control the entire journey from right from the booking until the execution. And because of that, we take the responsibility. We are the principal party. We give the underwriting, and we are the face of the customer, and we are the face of the tradesman. They don't know each other, and we remove that idiosyncratic risk that sits in the industry today. And by being the bridge across the equation.
So you're not just fulfilling it on both sides, in a managed way, but it seems like you're very focused on the customer experience on the customer side, but then also really building out those relationships on the tradesman side. So, you can really maintain quality control of how, this works, and then use technology to ramp up the speed of your ability to do that. Is that correct?
Brian, when the world got created, everything was raw materials. And then raw materials got commoditized, commodities got created. And commodities got commoditized, services got created. And when services got commoditized, experience got created. So today, it's all about who can deliver the best experience, who can deliver the best moments, and the greatest recall. And we believe that experience is where, you know, spend goes where emotion sits. And by creating the right experience, you can create the right emotional moments. And so at Green Van, we are all about removing friction. We are all about removing the current norm today, because today the businesses are all about you make a booking, you cannot cancel, you cannot change, you cannot do this. Oh my God, you've trapped yourself into this new hell. And we are saying you are not in any hell. You make a booking, you can change, you can cancel, you can do what you want to do, and you're not stuck. You are walking the open road. So just dialing back into that important point of yours, experience sits at the very forefront of our thought and how to make the consumer not feel guilty about booking with us, but in fact feeling satiated and elevated by having that experience with us.
Ben goes where emotion sits. I think you said that. That's really beautiful, poetic. So I understand the concept. I understand the role of Green Van. Uh, is this, for the, people listening, is this predominantly in India? Like where is this happening around the world? And kind of what's your vision for expanding Green Van?
So I live in London, and UK is is our first market, and the UK is going to be our next market. So we will look at more developing markets of maybe a few years down the line. But to start with, we imagine the US, the UK first, US, and maybe markets like Germany and Japan as the next markets, because they have the necessary key tenets of our expectations that we have from an economy, whether it's the size of the transaction, or it's the predictability of traffic, or it's the mindset of the consumer, or it's the underwriting and the payment systems. We have a certain set of metrics that we look at, and some of these countries satisfy those metrics well for us to say that, because we can cater the consumer best in those markets first. And once we learn from there, we will take that experience to the developing parts of the world.
Awesome. Very, very clear on the strategy. And within the UK, would love to know kind of how would you define success in the UK? Kind of how would you define kind of current traction to date in the UK? I mean, whatever you're willing to share, I'd love to understand kind of the operating mechanisms of today with Green Van.
To me, definition of satisfaction is if somebody says, I have done some work, I've given them some business, I would like to work with them again, I'd like to do a transaction with them again. It's about the consumer saying that they liked what they got. In terms of like, we've done thousands of transactions across many cities in the UK. And what we learn from there is the fact that while consumers are blessed with divine discontent, they have a sense of rewarding you back if you have been good with them and fair with them. And I feel that the intelligence that we have about, of our platform and on the consumer that we have, it allows us to know that the experience that we delivered, whether it was at par, above par, or below par, and then we match that with consumer feedback. And we've seen whenever our experience that we deliver, according to what we projected and what it says on the tin, consumers broadly are very giving back of what they got. So we feel it's a very nice response that consumers give to a good experience.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thousands of jobs. If you don't mind sharing, what kind of jobs? What are the tradesmen doing? Could tell me the versatility of the skills.
You appreciate, Brian, that Uber, for example, did not change the cars or the roads or the drivers. With the exact same cars, the same roads, and the same drivers, Uber changed the booking process. So did Amazon. Amazon did not change what was sold on Amazon. It was the same product, same consumers, and same things coming to your home. Amazon just changed the way you booked it. So even a green van, we have not changed John the plumber who was going and doing plumbing job in somebody's home or an electrician or a waste removals person. You're not changing any of that normal way of working. We have changed the way the booking happens. We have changed the way the allocation of work happens. And these jobs are like you want, a plumbing job done or waste removals done. You go onto the WhatsApp, you chat with us on WhatsApp, our AI chats with you. You don't even realize it's AI. It's so sophisticated. It understands from you your exact scope of work, gives you a bespoke price, you make the booking, and the tradesperson goes serious clarity and super clear instruction on where they have to go, when they have to do, when they have to go, and what job they have to do. And job gets done because there is no two versions of the truth. There is no loss in the sauce feeling.
And to your point, right? Like you're not changing um you're not changing what people are doing and the skill sets. You are providing more or less a platform for things to get done and change how they're done. Um and kind of even more specifically, I'm just curious, for the audience, also myself, what kind of jobs are the tradesmen, doing when they show up at these houses, hotels, or
So let's say you want to get some waste. You have a mattress to throw away. You have some furniture. You have some garden waste, appliances, washing machine. You have a broken faucet. You want to get a plumbing job done, a leaking faucet. You want to get those kind of jobs and repair jobs. Some challenges on a daily basis. But people are going through so much. So collecting that and understanding that requirement over a chat and saying, okay, we get it. And then, distilling down the problem from a broad situation to a very specific narrow problem and saying, you know what, this is going to cost you 45 pounds versus some mom and pop shop that would have given them 120-pound quote because we want to be, we are a corporatized business. So we want to give a very fair price. And then saying, when would you like us to do this job? We turn the customer into an order maker from an order taker and we show up at the time that you want and we get the job done and then we give you like notes and stuff like that. And obviously different services are being activated in different regions and different countries. So we are taking a call on the back of data and saying this service makes sense to start with and this service makes sense to follow up with and so on and so forth.
yeah, no, it's super interesting. And I there's an app here in the States called TaskRabbit, and I've had a lot of issues with it, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
uh, canceling
And
all the time. I wish I could just book someone and it was taken care of, but it doesn't really work too well. For
I want to jump into that really quick. TaskRabbit is a fundamentally different business and a fundamentally different offering. TaskRabbit is a place where you go pretty much log your problem without TaskRabbit counter questioning you,
Yeah.
without understanding what's going on at your end, because this business of booking services is about a dialogue, is about consultation, it's about discussion. And that's why a consultative AI, conversational AI is super important, where I understand the problem from my customer. I ask them questions, the customer asks me questions back, and there's a whole back and forth that happens. for me to zero down. But TaskRabbit, today's protocols, today's offerings in the market are either about filling a form or checking some boxes or talking on a phone. And talking on the phone has its bad results in the economics and efficiency. And filling a form or checking some boxes is one hell of an unclear sort of scope to start with.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying, right? It's not personalized at all.
Not bespoke.
It's not bespoke, and you have a way of making it feel bespoke and really kind of creating the matching mechanism that is personalized and is going to get the job done reliably every time. It's a good contrast.
Second, Brian, and it's not even the feeling of bespoke, it's fully bespoke. We understand your problem and we go from a broad conversation to zero down on the discussion funnel saying that we button up the problem. This is the challenge, and it's not even matching. We take the job and we know that this job is going to be done by this team, and that team does the job because in services, it's not like some neuroscience that you're going for operating the human brain. It's like we know that this is the scope of work and this is going to get done. So it's not even any kind of rocket science of matching. We just know that this is the problem and this is going to get done. So the job gets done.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking to you more deeply about it, I'm really understanding kind of how it works, which is great because we've had a number of conversations now, but now I'm getting into the weeds of the product with you. So, and tell me this. It sounds like you have a vision for a global expansion and really kind of seeing this in markets like the US and other more developed countries. What like say 3 to 5 years out, where do you see Green Van and how do you see it progressing?
I think given that we are a part of the front and center of the consumer's mobile attention. Mobile is the new front and center of the consumer's new life, and WhatsApp or chat channels like WhatsApp are the new front and center of inside the mobile. If you think about it, in the UK, in many markets, in India, everybody's on WhatsApp. It's the new place to be living and dialoguing. I mean, you take the WhatsApp out of the phone, you've taken the life out of the human pretty much. So we are not expecting you to download an app or go to a website. You're just chatting with like another friend on WhatsApp. Imagine that. Imagine the power of services being delivered to you through the power of chat instantaneously. Imagine 5 years from now, you could book a chef, you could book a snow shoveler, a driver, anything you wanted in 2 minutes. And you know it's fully flexible. It's so easy. And you're going to get a booking, you're going to get the follow through, you're going to see the environmental impact, the social impact of what the job you got done. You know it was fair trade. You know it was delivered to quality ESG standards. Just imagine that. Just even imagine like today you were to book an Uber and I told you, Brian, you don't have to open the Uber app. All you got to do is open WhatsApp, go to a particular number that let's say Greenman Services, and you said, I need a car to go from Kensington to Notting Hill. You'd be like, it's done. Kensington, Notting Hill. Here's the price. Here's the booking. Book done. It all happens in less than 30 seconds with the ease of natural language chat. So I believe that the future sits in natural language. Access to immediacy is the new underlying, and predictability and flexibility will dominate the new situation. And I think if you think about the Western GDP, 80% of the Western GDP is services. So we are very bullish that having the ability for the consumer to book services easily in such a large opportunity with ease and convenience and reliability, I think I see Greenman as playing a significant role in acquiring an important position as being a large downstreamer of capability.
Wow, you speak boldly, and you have a clear vision for where you want it to go. What do you think is the biggest what's the biggest mountain that you think you're going to have to hurdle ultimately to get there?
Human emotion is a market, and idiosyncrasy sits at the top of that. So when you're dealing in a highly heterogeneous market, we don't know where. We also know that consumers are blessed with divine discontent. So you're dealing with heterogeneity, you're dealing with divine discontent, you're dealing with a very broad market. You have to produce propositions that work for the broad market. So it's kind of like saying, how do I keep most people happy? So we'll have to find a semiotic red thread that works across communities, across markets, and saying this is a palatable proposition and it keeps people happy and hopefully some people delighted and very few people annoyed. And I think that's going to be the challenge in working out how do I balance this ball on my finger in terms of the value proposition and keep that intact and keep that integrity level there and saying, I never will want to shortchange the customer. I will always want to respect my ecosystem and deliver a sophisticated protocol in a fairly complex market.
Yeah, it seems like you know the market well. You know the challenges of kind of what's in front of you, and keeping a highly delightful experience that is bespoke and continues to reliably get the job done is going to be key. And to your point, the job of tradesmen, it's never going to go away. AI is not going to replace it. Maybe until we have robotics kind of in the homes doing all the jobs in 20 years. But for the next, I'd say, few decades, you're probably pretty safe. And it's but to your point, creating the best connective experience.
Well,
Among, so I love.
right. No, thank you. And that's a great summary. But I think like connective tissue with access to immediacy, with reliability and visibility, produces a pretty succinct offering, I think.
For sure, for sure, and it's clear, it's not overly complex. I mean, it's complex probably in the logistics and operations, but, like, on its surface, you're doing one thing, and trying to figure out how to take that globally. Anuj, as we have a few minutes left here, I'm just curious, what would you tell, maybe the younger Anuj, 15 years old, or maybe the younger entrepreneur who's 15 years old, knowing what you know now, and, let's say the sprawling age, I'll pin you at, mid-30s, late 30s. What if you could take yourself back 20, 25 years, what would you tell your younger self or the younger entrepreneur on the street of, India, looking at all the opportunities to make things better, but maybe not having the ability to do so quite yet?
I would say let wisdom viral. I would say many things, and I will tell you some. There is too much capital in the world. Risk is overpriced. Blessings are underpriced. Um, I would say that there exists a much better tomorrow. And I would say things like over analysis results in paralysis, great artistship. And I mean, uh, and I would say that the intelligence of today is going to become the common sense of tomorrow. The luxuries of today are going to become the basics for tomorrow. And I would definitely say that the strugglers and the hustles of today are going to become the heroes of tomorrow. Question is, the rocket that you're building is going to make it to the moon. Take a great team and tell them to not worry about the seat they're going to have on the rocket, because if the rocket makes it to the moon, they're going to make it to the moon. So I feel that have a single tunnel focus. The final chapter of our lives is yet to be written. This is day one, and let's build. And time to switch and sail. So, this would be some of my thoughts to the younger generation. And I think there's, as I said, universe has room for passion, especially for innovation. Just get out there and don't worry about leaving the shore to cross the ocean. Just do it.
Inspiring. I'm waiting for your TED Talk next, by the way.
I'm guaranteed one audience.
That's right. You are, at least one. Anuj, this has been a joy, as our conversations always are. Thanks for letting me peel the onion a little bit today with you, and thanks for explaining everything so beautifully and succinctly. It's a gift of yours to inspire and share kind of your vision. So thanks for doing it with me for almost an hour here in our audience. So I appreciate that. Where can people find Green Van? Where can people find you? Tell me more.
I'm on LinkedIn, and Green Van is on people's WhatsApps. They're the most available, omnipresent technologies today. But I want to compliment you, Brian. You keep it very light. You ask some very intelligent questions, and I think it's good because I love the fact that you're bringing to the audience some real insights that I hadn't thought about before this interview. And asking me things right there on the spot, into the spotlight. I'm like, you're making me think deeper than I thought about a lot of things, and that I think brings the real insight for me on how I look at things. So you made me laterally think about a lot of things as well today. So thank you for opening perspectives for me too.
You made it easy. It's it takes a good interviewee to figure out how you ask questions and go with the flow of it. It's kind of like making a song, and you gotta kind of follow the flow of the interview, and if you do something too soon, or it kind of throws the whole thing off. So appreciate you letting me.
I think the relationship is symbiotic, and I think our job is to create a great wallpaper on the three-dimensional tapestry of the audience. And I think you make that happen. I think it takes two to clap.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, this is a joy, and I look forward to sharing this with the world.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The One Away Show with Anuj Gupta. What stayed with me most is how Anuj blends logic and intuition, how his spiritual depth feeds his ability to see complexity clearly and create solutions with empathy and scale. Whether it's building Green Van or imagining an equal global economy, he's not chasing disruption for its own sake. He's building systems that serve real people. If this conversation made you think differently, I'd love it if you shared it or left a review. As always, we are back every Tuesday and Friday with more episodes just like this. Until next time, never stop asking how things could work better for everyone.